The sun cast long shadows across the dusty trail as August Newcomb rode his weary horse through the waning light of day, his weathered face telling tales of years beneath the brutal western sky. The distant sound of a woman's muffled cry pierced the stillness of the approaching dusk, causing him to rein his mount to a halt and strain his ears toward the source of the disturbance. In the year 1876, the wild territories of Colorado were no place for the faint of heart, and August had learned long ago to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. He dismounted, tied his horse to a nearby tree, and crept toward the sounds that grew increasingly disturbing as he approached. Through the tangled brush, he observed a scene that made his blood boil. A woman, her dress torn and her back exposed, was bound to a post while a man with a whip stood over her. August's hand instinctively moved to the revolver at his hip as he assessed the situation, counting 3 men surrounding the woman. "You'll speak when I tell you to speak," snarled the man with the whip, his voice slurred with drink. "A woman's place ain't to question her husband." The woman, despite her obvious pain, lifted her head defiantly. Her silence seemed to enrage the man further, and he raised the whip again. August's decision was immediate. He emerged from his hiding place, revolver drawn. "That's enough," he called out, his voice steady and commanding despite the fury he felt rising within him. The men turned, startled by his sudden appearance. The one with the whip, clearly the leader, squared his shoulders. "This ain't your business, stranger. Move along." "When I see a woman being treated like that, I make it my business," August replied, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. "Now, I suggest you cut her loose and step away." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the clearing. 3 against 1. "I don't like those odds for you, cowboy." August didn't blink. "I don't much care for counting. Last chance to walk away." The tension hung in the air for a long moment before one of the other men, younger and clearly less committed to violence, backed away. "Come on, Earl. It ain't worth dying over." The leader, Earl, hesitated, his face twisted with rage and indecision. Finally, he spat on the ground. "Fine. She ain't worth the bullet." He tossed the whip aside. "She's damaged goods anyway." As the 3 men mounted their horses and rode off, August quickly moved to the woman. Her back was marked with angry welts, some bleeding where the whip had cut through her delicate skin. With gentle hands, he untied her bonds, careful not to cause more pain. "My name's August Newcomb," he said softly as he worked at the ropes. "I've got a camp not far from here. I can help you get cleaned up, tend to those wounds." The woman didn't respond, didn't even look at him. When the ropes fell away, she nearly collapsed, but August caught her before she hit the ground. In the fading light, he could see she was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with hair the color of wheat and eyes that held a mix of fear and defiance. "You're safe now," he assured her, removing his coat and draping it carefully over her shoulders to cover her torn clothing. "You don't have to say anything, but I promise you this: you'll speak freely with me. I won't ever silence your voice." Something in his words seemed to reach her, and for the first time, she met his gaze. A single tear traced down her dirt-streaked face. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely audible. August helped her onto his horse, then led them both to his camp, which was situated near a clear stream. The woman remained silent as he built up the fire and prepared a simple meal. It wasn't until he had cleaned and dressed her wounds with supplies from his saddlebag that she spoke again. "My name is Julia Blackburn," she said, her voice stronger now. "That man, he was my husband." August nodded, not pushing for more information. "You're welcome to stay here tonight, Julia. Tomorrow, I can take you wherever you need to go." "I have nowhere to go," she replied, staring into the flames. "He'll find me if I return to town. Then we'll figure something out," August promised. "But tonight, you rest. You're safe here." Julia looked at him with uncertainty in her eyes. "Why would you help a stranger? You don't know me." August poked at the fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise into the night sky. "I know what it's like to be powerless," he said after a moment. "No one deserves that, especially not for simply speaking their mind." Julia pulled his coat tighter around her shoulders, as if drawing strength from his words. "He wasn't always like this," she said softly. "When we married 2 years ago, he was kind. Then his business failed, and he started drinking. He said I embarrassed him at a town meeting when I suggested the council should consider allowing women to participate in local decisions. Her voice faltered. He said I needed to learn my place. August's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice gentle. There's no justification for what he did. None at all. They sat in silence for a while, the crackling fire and distant sounds of night creatures the only noise. Eventually, Julia's exhaustion overcame her, and she fell asleep on the bedroll August had prepared for her. As he kept watch through the night, August pondered what to do next. He had been on his way to his brother's ranch near Silverdale, a small settlement about 2 days' ride away. It was as good a destination as any for now, a place where Julia could recover and consider her options. Morning came with a soft golden glow across the plains. August woke to find Julia already up, washing her face in the stream. Her movements were stiff, undoubtedly from the pain of her injuries, but there was a quiet determination in the way she held herself. "Morning," he greeted her. "How are you feeling?" "Sore," she admitted. "But better than yesterday." August nodded, beginning to prepare coffee over the rekindled fire. "I was thinking, if you've nowhere else to go, you might come with me to my brother's ranch. It's a couple of days' ride from here. He's got a big place, plenty of room. His wife Elizabeth is a good woman, was a nurse during the war. She could help with those wounds better than I can." Julia hesitated, clearly weighing her options. "Your brother wouldn't mind?" "Adam's always taken in strays," August said with a small smile. "Including me, from time to time." This brought a tentative smile to Julia's face, the first he'd seen. It transformed her features, revealing a natural beauty that her fear and pain had hidden. "Then I would be grateful for the shelter," she said. "At least until I can figure out what to do next." They broke camp and set out for Silverdale, with Julia riding August's horse while he walked alongside. Despite her protests, he insisted she ride. "Those wounds need time to heal," he explained. "And I've spent most of my life on my feet anyway." As they traveled, August shared stories of his life as a cowboy, his time driving cattle north from Texas, the sights he'd seen across the Western Territories. Gradually, Julia began to share pieces of her own story as well. She'd come west from Boston with her family when she was 16. Her father had been seeking opportunity in the booming mining towns. "He always encouraged me to read, to have opinions," she explained. "He said the West was a place where people could remake themselves, where the old rules didn't have to apply." "Your father sounds like a wise man," August commented. Julia's expression darkened. "He died in a mine collapse 3 years ago. My mother passed from fever shortly after. That's when Earl started calling on me. He seemed kind then, respected, I thought." She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. "I thought he would be good to me. Some men change when they think they own something," August said grimly. "Or someone." They stopped to rest at midday beside a small creek. As August filled their canteens, Julia watched him thoughtfully. "You're different from most men I've known," she observed. "Most wouldn't interfere in a man's treatment of his wife. They'd consider it his right." August's expression hardened. "No man has the right to treat another human being that way, wife or not." He handed her a canteen. "My mother taught me that. She raised me and Adam alone after our father was killed in a bar fight. She was the strongest person I've ever known." "She must have been extraordinary," Julia said. "She was," August agreed. "She taught me that a man's strength isn't in his fists or his voice. It's in how he treats those who are vulnerable." He looked away, suddenly self-conscious. "Anyway, we should reach a proper stopping place before dark. There's an abandoned way station about 5 miles ahead." As they continued their journey, August noticed Julia sitting straighter in the saddle, her eyes taking in the landscape with growing interest rather than fear. She would occasionally point out a bird or wildflower, revealing knowledge that spoke of her education and observant nature. By the time they reached the old way station, a sense of ease had developed between them. The building was weathered but solid, offering shelter from the elements. Inside, August found an old stove still in working condition and set about preparing a more substantial meal than they'd had on the trail. "I can help," Julia insisted, despite his protests that she should rest. "I may be injured, but I'm not helpless." August relented, recognizing the importance of allowing her this independence. They worked together preparing a simple stew from supplies in his pack, their movements becoming a comfortable dance around the small space. As night fell, they sat at a rickety table eating their meal by lantern light. The warmth of the stove and food seemed to loosen something in Julia, and she began to speak more freely about her dreams and disappointments. "I always wanted to teach," she confessed. "In Boston, I had nearly completed my education for it when my father decided to move west. Here, the town council said they didn't need a woman teacher when a man could do the job. Earl promised when we married that he'd help me start a small school, but that promise disappeared as quickly as his business fortunes." "It's not too late," August said. "Silverdale has been growing. Last time I visited my brother, he mentioned they were in need of a teacher." Hope flickered in Julia's eyes. "Do you really think so?" "I do," he said firmly. "From what I've seen, you've got the knowledge and the spirit for it." Julia smiled, but it faded quickly. "Earl will come looking for me. He won't just let me go." "You don't belong to him," August said, his voice low but intense. "No matter what the law might say about marriage. And I promise you this, he won't hurt you again. Not while I draw breath." The conviction in his voice seemed to reassure her, and Julia reached across the table to briefly touch his hand. "Thank you, August, for everything." The simple touch sent an unexpected warmth through him, and August recognized the danger in the feelings beginning to stir within him. Julia was vulnerable, recently traumatized. The last thing she needed was another man imposing his desires upon her. He withdrew his hand gently. "We should get some rest," he said. "Another full day of travel tomorrow." They arranged their bedrolls on opposite sides of the station's main room, the stove between them providing both warmth and a proper boundary. But as August drifted toward sleep, he found his thoughts continually returning to the quiet strength he'd witnessed in Julia throughout the day. She was remarkably resilient in ways that went beyond simple endurance. The next morning brought clear skies and easier travel. Julia insisted on walking part of the way to give the horse a rest, and August found himself admiring her determination. Despite her injuries, which he knew must still be causing her considerable pain, she maintained a steady pace and an increasingly optimistic outlook. "Tell me about your brother's ranch," she requested as they walked side by side, the horse following behind. "Adam built it up from almost nothing," August explained. "Started with just 20 acres and a handful of cattle 10 years ago. Now he's got over 200 acres, one of the largest herds in the county. He and Elizabeth have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl." "And you? Do you work with him?" Julia asked. August shook his head. "I help out when I'm there, but I've never been one to stay in one place too long. I've been driving cattle, working as a scout, doing odd jobs from Texas to Montana for the past 15 years. "A true wanderer," Julia observed. "I suppose so," he acknowledged with a slight smile. "Though lately I've been thinking it might be time to put down some roots." "What changed your mind?" August considered the question carefully. "Age, maybe. I'm 35 now. Seeing my brother's family, the life he's built. It makes a man wonder what he's been chasing all these years." They continued their journey through the afternoon, stopping occasionally to rest, and sharing stories that revealed more of their respective pasts. August found himself captivated by Julia's intelligence and perspective on the world. Despite the hardships she'd endured, there was an undercurrent of optimism in her worldview that he found refreshing. By late afternoon, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon, promising rain before nightfall. They picked up their pace, hoping to reach a suitable shelter before the storm hit. Luck was with them. They discovered an abandoned line shack just as the first heavy drops began to fall. The shack was small but sound, with a functioning stove and enough firewood stacked against one wall to last through the night. August quickly started a fire while Julia arranged their supplies. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof and creating a cozy isolation that seemed to draw them closer together. As they sat near the stove drinking coffee, the conversation turned to deeper matters. "Do you ever regret not settling down?" Julia asked. "Having a family of your own?" August stared into his cup for a long moment. "Sometimes. But the life I've led, always moving, taking whatever work came my way. It didn't seem fair to ask a woman to share that kind of uncertainty." "Perhaps you never met a woman who would have chosen that life willingly," Julia suggested. Their eyes met across the small space, and something unspoken passed between them. August looked away first. "What about you?" he asked. "Before everything went wrong with Earl, did you want children?" Julia's expression softened. "Yes, I always imagined teaching my own children alongside others, creating a home filled with books and ideas. She sighed. When I realized what Earl had become, I was almost relieved we hadn't had children. I couldn't bear the thought of raising a child in that environment of fear. You'll have that chance again, August said with certainty. A classroom of your own, maybe even children of your own, one day, with someone who values your mind and your voice. Julia studied him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable, as if she could see through the careful barriers he'd built around his heart over years of solitary wandering. Why did you really stop that day? She asked suddenly. When you saw what was happening to me. Most men would have ridden on, told themselves it wasn't their concern. August considered his answer carefully. Because it was wrong. Because you deserved better. And because. He hesitated, then continued more softly. Because 20 years ago, I saw something similar happen to my mother, and I was too young to stop it. A man she'd taken up with after my father died. He beat her for contradicting him in front of his friends. Adam and I were just boys, but after that night, we swore we'd never stand by if we saw someone being abused that way. Julia moved to sit beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth. I'm sorry that happened to your mother, and I'm grateful you were there for me. The intimacy of the moment, the small space, the storm isolating them from the rest of the world, it all combined to create a powerful connection between them. August was acutely aware of her presence beside him, the subtle scent of her hair, the trust she was placing in him. We should get some sleep, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. We'll reach my brother's place by tomorrow afternoon if the weather clears. Julia nodded, but neither of them moved immediately. Finally, she reached out and touched his hand again, this time allowing her fingers to linger. Thank you, August, for everything. He turned his hand to briefly squeeze hers, then rose to check that the door was securely barred for the night. As he settled into his bedroll across the room from hers, August found himself both looking forward to reaching his brother's ranch and regretting the end of this journey that had brought them together. The rain continued through the night, but had reduced to a gentle mist by morning. They set out early, eager to reach their destination. The landscape had been transformed by the rain, vibrant with renewed life and color. Julia seemed to draw energy from the freshness around them, pointing out wildflowers and commenting on the clarity of the distant mountains. By mid-afternoon, the familiar outline of the Newcomb ranch came into view: a substantial main house, a large barn, several outbuildings, and fenced pastures where cattle grazed. August felt a mixture of pride and nostalgia at the sight. This was as close to a home as he had, even if he rarely stayed for long. As they approached, a tall man emerged from the barn, shading his eyes against the sun. Recognition dawned on his face, and he strode toward them with a wide smile. August, wasn't expecting you for another week, Adam Newcomb called out. His smile faltered slightly as he noticed Julia, taking in her condition and the protective stance August had unconsciously adopted beside her. Adam, August greeted his brother with a firm handshake. This is Julia Blackburn. She's in need of safe haven for a while. Understanding passed between the brothers without further explanation needed. Adam nodded and turned to Julia with a welcoming smile. Any friend of August's is welcome here, Miss Blackburn. My wife Elizabeth will be pleased to have another woman around the place. Thank you for your hospitality, Julia replied with quiet dignity. Let's get you both inside, Adam said. Elizabeth's just pulled a batch of bread from the oven, if I know her schedule. The main house was warm and inviting, filled with the evidence of family life: children's toys arranged neatly in one corner, handmade quilts draped over comfortable furniture, the delicious aroma of home cooking filling the air. Elizabeth Newcomb, a capable-looking woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, greeted them warmly. When August discreetly explained Julia's situation, Elizabeth's expression grew serious. You poor dear, she said to Julia. You'll stay here as long as you need to. No one will harm you under this roof. The children Benjamin and Matthew, ages 10 and 8, and 6-year-old Sarah regarded Julia with curious eyes, but good manners. After introductions were made, Elizabeth shooed them outside to complete their chores, then led Julia upstairs to show her to a guest room and tend to her injuries. Left alone with his brother, August accepted the whiskey Adam offered and sat heavily in a chair by the fireplace. She's been through hell, Adam observed quietly. Her husband, August, confirmed grimly. Whipped her for speaking her mind at a town meeting. I found her tied to a post. Adam's expression darkened. Some men don't deserve the title. He studied his brother thoughtfully. You've got feelings for her. August started to deny it, then sighed. Doesn't matter if I do. She needs time to heal, to find her own way forward. The last thing she needs is another man trying to claim her. There's a difference between claiming someone and caring for them, Adam pointed out. And from what little I've seen, she looks at you like you hung the moon. She's grateful. That's all. Adam shook his head with a knowing smile. If you say so, brother. The conversation shifted to ranch matters, and August welcomed the change of subject. Soon, Elizabeth and Julia rejoined them. Julia, now dressed in clean clothes borrowed from Elizabeth and looking more relaxed than August had yet seen her. Dinner that evening was a lively affair, with the children eager to hear August's stories of his travels since his last visit. Julia remained quiet for the most part, but her smile was genuine as she watched the family interactions. After the meal, when the children had been sent to bed, the adults sat around the table with coffee. Julia tells me she was trained as a teacher, Elizabeth said, glancing meaningfully at her husband. Isn't the town council still looking for someone to take over the school? Adam nodded. They are indeed. Miss Collins is retiring at the end of the term, and they've had no luck finding a replacement. Hope blossomed on Julia's face. Do you really think they might consider me? I don't see why not, Adam replied. Education is valued in Silverdale, and the chairman of the school board, Harold Jenkins, is a progressive man. He's been advocating for women's suffrage at the Territorial Assembly. I could speak to him when I go into town tomorrow, Elizabeth offered. He and his wife are good friends of ours. That would be wonderful, Julia said, her voice filled with cautious optimism. Then her expression sobered. But if I take such a position, Earl will surely hear of it. He has business connections throughout the territory. Silverdale is nearly 50 miles from where we found you, August reminded her gently. And the town has a proper sheriff who takes his job seriously. You'd be safe there. And you'd be welcome to stay with us until you get established, Elizabeth added. It would be a blessing having another woman around with all these men and boys. Julia's eyes glistened with tears. I don't know how to thank you all for such kindness. No thanks needed, Adam said firmly. We take care of our own here. The words hung in the air with special significance. In just days, Julia had somehow become one of them, someone to be protected and supported. August felt a swell of pride in his family and a growing affection for Julia that he was finding increasingly difficult to ignore. Over the next several days, Julia integrated seamlessly into the rhythm of ranch life. Despite Elizabeth's protests that she should rest and heal, Julia insisted on contributing to household tasks and even volunteered to help the children with their lessons in the evenings. August observed how naturally she took to teaching, her face animated as she explained concepts and praised their progress. Elizabeth made good on her promise, speaking to Harold Jenkins during her trip to town. He expressed immediate interest in meeting Julia, and arrangements were made for an interview at the ranch the following week. During this time, August found himself seeking Julia's company whenever his ranch chores were complete. They would often walk together in the evenings, sharing stories and perspectives as the sun set over the distant mountains. With each conversation, his admiration for her intelligence and resilience grew. Do you think you'll stay? Julia asked him one evening as they sat on a hilltop overlooking the ranch. Here at the ranch, I mean. August considered the question. I'm not sure. Adams always said there's a place for me if I want it, but I've never been good at staying in one place. Julia nodded thoughtfully. What keeps driving you to move on? Restlessness, I suppose, he admitted. A feeling that what I'm looking for is just over the next horizon. And what are you looking for? August turned to look at her, struck by how the golden light of sunset illuminated her features. Her wounds were healing well, and there was a newfound confidence in the way she carried herself. I'm not sure I knew, until recently. Their eyes held for a long moment before Julia looked away, a blush coloring her cheeks. I should get back. I promised Sarah I'd help her with her reading before bed. As they walked back to the ranch house, August found himself wondering if perhaps what he'd been searching for all these years had found him instead. The day of Julia's interview arrived with clear skies and mild weather. Harold Jenkins, a distinguished man in his 60s with a scholarly appearance despite his frontier surroundings, arrived at the ranch mid-morning. Elizabeth served coffee in the parlor while Adam took August out to check on a section of damaged fencing, giving Julia privacy for her interview. As they worked, August found it difficult to concentrate, his thoughts continually returning to the house and wondering how the interview was progressing. "She'll do fine," Adam assured him, noticing his distraction. "Jenkins isn't just looking for a teacher. He's looking for someone who can inspire the children. From what I've seen, that's exactly what Julia does naturally." August nodded, forcing himself to focus on the task at hand. But when they returned to the house for lunch, he couldn't help the surge of hope he felt at seeing Julia's radiant smile. "Mr. Jenkins has offered me the position," she announced, her voice trembling with excitement. "I'm to start at the beginning of the new term, in 3 weeks. "That's wonderful news," Elizabeth exclaimed, squeezing Julia's hand. "Congratulations," August said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "I knew you'd impress him." "We discussed her situation," Jenkins explained, addressing the unspoken concern in the room. "The school comes with living quarters, a small cottage attached to the schoolhouse. It's modest but comfortable for a single teacher. And as for her security," he continued, "I've already spoken with Sheriff Patterson. He's aware of the circumstances and has assured me that anyone causing trouble for our new teacher will answer to him directly." Relief washed over August at this news. The thought of Julia living alone in town had concerned him, but knowing the sheriff was informed and vigilant eased his worry considerably. That evening, after Jenkins had departed and the household had settled into its nightly routine, August found Julia sitting alone on the porch, gazing up at the stars. He joined her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Happy?" he asked simply. "More than I can express," she replied. "For the first time in years, I feel like I have a future to look forward to. A purpose." "You deserve it," August said. "Every bit of it." Julia turned to face him, her expression serious. "I wouldn't be here if not for you, August. You didn't just save me from Earl, you showed me that I could trust again. That not all men are like him. Any decent man would have done the same." August demurred. "No," she said firmly. "Most wouldn't have. And even fewer would have treated me with the respect you've shown. Never pushing, always listening." She hesitated, then added softly, "You kept your promise. With you, I've always felt free to speak my mind." The tenderness in her voice caught him off guard. August felt a powerful urge to reach for her hand, to draw her closer, but he restrained himself. Despite their growing closeness, Julia was still recovering from a traumatic marriage. The last thing he wanted was to make her feel pressured in any way. "I should turn in," he said, rising from his seat. "Early start tomorrow if we're going to finish that north pasture fence." Julia looked momentarily disappointed, but nodded. "Good night, August." As he walked back to the bunkhouse where he stayed when visiting the ranch, August found himself conflicted. His feelings for Julia had grown stronger with each passing day, but he questioned whether acting on them would be fair to her. She was just beginning to rebuild her life, to reclaim her independence. Would his attention be a welcome addition or an unwanted complication? The following days brought a flurry of activity as preparations were made for Julia to transition into her new role. Elizabeth helped her select fabric for new clothes appropriate for a schoolteacher, while Adam arranged for the school cottage to be thoroughly cleaned and prepared. August found himself volunteering to repair several items for the cottage: a wobbly chair, a door that didn't quite close properly, shelves that needed reinforcement. Working with his hands gave him time to think, to consider his options. The pull to remain in Silverdale grew stronger by the day, challenging his lifelong pattern of wandering. But was it the place calling to him, or the woman? One afternoon, as he was delivering the repaired items to the school, he encountered Julia there, arranging books and planning lessons. She looked up at his entrance, her face brightening. "August, I didn't expect to see you here." He set down the chair he was carrying. "Thought I'd bring these over myself. Make sure everything's properly placed." Julia ran her hand along the newly repaired shelf. "Your craftsmanship is excellent." "Thank you." "It's nothing," he said, suddenly self-conscious under her appreciative gaze. She moved closer, looking up at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "It's not nothing to me. Every kind thing you do means something to me." The air between them seemed charged with unspoken feelings. August cleared his throat. Julia, The schoolhouse door opened, interrupting whatever he had been about to say. The town's minister, Reverend Campbell, entered with a stack of hymn books. "Ah, Miss Blackburn. And Mr. Newcomb, isn't it? I've brought these for the children's music lessons, as we discussed." The moment broken, August stepped back, nodding politely to the Reverend before making his excuses to leave. As he rode back to the ranch, he cursed his own hesitation. What had he been about to say? Even he wasn't entirely sure. That evening, Adam found him sitting alone by the corral, watching the sunset with a troubled expression. "You're thinking too much, brother," Adam observed, leaning against the fence beside him. August chuckled without humor. "Probably. She cares for you," Adam said bluntly. "Anyone with eyes can see it. It's complicated. Only because you're making it so." Adam sighed. "Look, I understand your concern. She's been through a terrible ordeal. But treating her like she's too fragile to make her own choices isn't respecting her. It's coddling her." August considered his brother's words. "What if I'm not what she needs? That's for her to decide, isn't it?" Adam replied. "All I know is I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at her. And life's too short to waste chances at happiness because you're afraid." With those words, Adam clapped him on the shoulder and left him to his thoughts. The next morning, August rose early, his mind made up. He found Julia taking breakfast with Elizabeth, the two women deep in conversation about the upcoming school term. He waited patiently until they finished, then asked Julia if she might walk with him before the day's tasks began. They strolled toward a small stream that ran through the property, the morning sun casting long shadows across the dewy grass. August had rehearsed what he wanted to say, but now that the moment had arrived, the carefully planned words abandoned him. "Julia," he began, stopping to face her. "I've been thinking about what happens next." She looked at him questioningly. "You mean after I start teaching?" "Yes, and about where I'll be." He took a deep breath. "The truth is, I've never stayed anywhere for long. Always moving on, looking for something I couldn't name. But lately, I've been thinking that maybe what I've been searching for isn't a place at all." Julia's eyes widened slightly as his meaning became clear. "I care for you," he continued. "More than I expected to. More than might be wise, given everything you've been through. And I want you to know that I'll respect whatever boundaries you need. If friendship is all you want from me, that's what I'll give you." Julia was silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable. August's heart hammered in his chest as he waited for her response. When Earl first began to change, she finally said, "I blamed myself. I thought if I could just be quieter, more agreeable, he would become the man I thought I'd married." She shook her head. "It took me too long to realize that the problem was never my voice. It was that he couldn't bear to hear it." She took a step closer to him. "With you, I've never felt that fear. From the very beginning, you wanted me to speak, to be heard. You've never tried to make me smaller to accommodate your ego." "I never would," August assured her. "I know." Julia reached out, tentatively touching his hand. "That's why my feelings for you have grown into something I wasn't prepared for. Something that frightens me, not because I don't trust you, but because I'm afraid to trust myself after being so wrong before." August turned his hand to gently clasp hers. "We don't have to rush anything. We have time." Julia smiled, the most genuine, unguarded smile he'd seen from her yet. "Time sounds perfect." She hesitated, then added, "Does this mean you're staying in Silverdale?" "I'm considering it," August replied with a small smile. "Seems there might be something worth staying for." The weeks that followed brought significant changes for both of them. Julia moved into the teacher's cottage and began her new role with enthusiasm that quickly endeared her to the children and their parents. August, to his brother's obvious delight, accepted a partnership in the ranch, taking charge of expanding their horse breeding operation. Their courtship progressed slowly, respectfully. August would visit Julia in town, sometimes bringing small gifts, a book he thought she might enjoy, wildflowers gathered from the prairie. They would walk together after church on Sundays, their conversations ranging from philosophy to politics to simple, everyday observations. In these exchanges, August discovered a depth of connection he had never experienced before. Julia blossomed in her new environment. Free from fear and valued for her mind, she became an influential figure in the community. She organized a reading circle for the town's women and advocated successfully for the establishment of a proper library. Her confidence grew with each passing day. It was on a crisp autumn evening, nearly 6 months after their first meeting, that August finally found the courage to kiss her. They had been walking back from a community harvest festival, the stars brilliant in the clear night sky above them. Julia had been describing her plans for a Christmas pageant with the schoolchildren, her face animated with excitement. August had stopped walking, simply watching her with wonder. When she turned to him questioningly, he'd said, "I love you, Julia. I think I have since the day I found you." The words had come naturally, without the awkwardness he'd feared. Julia's eyes had filled with tears, but her smile was radiant. "I love you too," she'd replied. "You gave me back my voice, and in doing so, you gave me back myself." Their first kiss had been gentle, a promise of tenderness and respect that would define their relationship. 2 months later, on Christmas Eve, August proposed. They were married in the spring, a simple ceremony in the town church with Adam standing as best man and Elizabeth as matron of honor. Julia continued teaching, refusing to give up the career she loved even after marriage, a progressive choice that raised some eyebrows, but was ultimately respected due to the positive impact she'd had on the community's children. August never returned to his wandering ways. He found in Julia and Silverdale the sense of purpose and belonging he'd been searching for all along. Their home became known as a place of lively discussion and warm hospitality, where all voices were welcomed and valued. On their first anniversary, August presented Julia with a journal bound in soft leather. Inside the cover, he had inscribed a simple message: "For your thoughts, your dreams, your voice, all precious to me." Julia's eyes had filled with tears as she read the inscription. "When you found me that day," she said softly, "I thought my life was over. I never imagined it was just beginning. I promised you would speak freely with me." August reminded her, taking her hand in his. "It's a promise I intend to keep for all our days together." 5 years later, their family had grown to include twin daughters, Emma and Grace, who inherited their mother's intelligence and their father's quiet strength. Their home expanded to accommodate not just their own growing family, but occasionally women in circumstances similar to Julia's former situation, those seeking refuge and a chance to rebuild their lives. Julia's school had flourished under her guidance, and she had recently been appointed to the town council, the first woman to serve in such a capacity in Silverdale. August could not have been prouder of her accomplishments or more certain of the decision he'd made to stay. On warm summer evenings, they would often sit together on the porch of their home, watching their daughters play in the yard as the sun set over the distant mountains. In these moments, August would sometimes reflect on how close he had come to riding past that clearing all those years ago, to missing the chance meeting that had changed both their lives so profoundly. "What are you thinking about?" Julia would ask, noticing his contemplative expression. And August, true to his nature, would always answer honestly. "About how finding you that day was the best thing that ever happened to me. About how grateful I am that you found the courage to rebuild your life. About how much I love the family we've created together." Julia would smile, resting her head against his shoulder. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she would say. "That I could have a marriage where my thoughts and feelings are not just tolerated but valued." "You'll always speak freely here," August would remind her, echoing the promise he'd made that first day. "And I'll always be here to listen." In a time and place where women's voices were often silenced, August and Julia Newcomb had created something rare and precious, a partnership of equals, built on respect, admiration, and unwavering love. Their story became part of Silverdale's legacy, a testament to the healing power of compassion and the transformative nature of being truly heard. And in the generations that followed, their descendants would look back with pride at the courage of a woman who reclaimed her voice and the man who valued it enough to help her find it again.